but he says temperament, not intellect, is what makes the difference when it comes to investing. But what I didn't know is that quote was inspired by his wife, who told him oftentimes to cool off and to think long term.
Do you want a wealthy retirement without worrying about money? Welcome to the Retire in Texas podcast, where you will discover how to enjoy your faith, your family, and your freedom in the state of Texas. And now, here's your host, financial advisor, author, and all-around good Texan, Darryl Lyons.
Hey, this is Darryl Lyons, CEO and co-founder of Packs Financial Group, and you're listening to Retire in Texas, and we really want you to find a place where you can stay grounded, but also learn about finance and economics and just life in general. And if that's what you're looking for, you come to the right place. Also, I got to tell you, I'm a financial guy, but I don't use a lot of numbers in shows. So this is not a show where I'm out to impress you. I just want to help in about 15 to 20 minutes. And this information is general in nature only. It's not intended to provide a bunch of specific to your situation, investment, tax, or legal advice. And visit packsfinancialgroup.com for more information. Okay, so there's the intro, and I want to jump into talk about spouses. George Bush, I heard him tell this story. This was at a conference years ago. True or not, I don't know. You figure it out. But him and his wife were driving back to I guess it was their hometown. Maybe it was her hometown. This was George and Barbara Bush. So it was her hometown. And they go get gas, and she looks at the guy that's the inside the gas station attendant and looks at him and says, "Honey, that's my high school boyfriend." And he laughs. George Bush laughs and says, "Think about that. If you would have married him, you would have been the wife of a gas station attendant." And she said, "Silly George. If I would have married him, he would have been president." I really don't know any truth about that, but I think it is funny, and I think there's a little bit of truth to that. I can actually relate. So starting PAX 2007, there was kind of a wind up to start PAX. And so there was these couple years that we really didn't have any money. And so this is my Barbara Bush story. And meaning that my spouse had a significant involvement and influence in where I'm at today. And I was completely broke. Trying to be a financial advisor when you're completely broke is like a shop teacher with no fingers. But I was doing it anyways, and I was hustling. I was working hard, but I could not get anybody to give me money, invest, or anything. And I had a newborn. And so I'd have to take a cash advance check from my credit card to pay my mortgage. And so it was just really hard. And so I remember going around the kitchen island and just sobbing like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore, Caress. I'm done. It's too stressful. And it didn't take much. She said, "This is your dream and you can't quit." That was all it took. That was it. And my life's never been the same. Like, had I listened to my own inner voice, I would not be where I'm at today, which I'm so grateful. I couldn't be in a better place that's uniquely designed for the way God made me. It was because of Caress, my wife. So I want to talk about engaging a spouse, but I want to start out by talking about just women in general. So this is, if I have some nuanced gender biases, you just have to forgive me, because I'm not going to, substantiate every single claim here with some disclosures. But the reality is that women are better investors than men. I mean, studies have shown it. It's kind of crazy that some studies show that women make about 2% more in returns annually than men. I mean, there's many studies that have been done on this. Fidelity did a study in 2021, 5 million people. They looked at 5 million people over 10 years. University of California, Berkeley's done studies. Wells Fargo's done studies. Warwick Business School is the one I'm referencing. They said it's about a 1.8. So yes, I rounded up to 2 for drama. But I mean, that's significant. Compounded over time, that's significant. So we got to ask ourselves why. Why is it that all these studies show that women are better at investing? And I'm going to suggest to you that there's 2 reasons. And so let's unpack those 2 reasons. One is overconfidence by men. I guess a polite way of saying it is that women are not as confident, and there's something to, there's something to be said for that. But I'd also maybe categorize this in a maybe more technical way, and that's we look at risk tolerances. So you have conservative, modern, aggressive. And so rather talking about confidence or overconfidence or underconfidence, we can say women are categorically, Wells Fargo did these studies, more conservative when they do these risk tolerances. And so it would imply, and I think there's plenty of other studies to support this, that men are just generally more confident, generally speaking. That's changing. There's generations that are kind of changing that narrative, or at least closing the gap. But when it comes to investing, men tend to be more confident. Most men are out there buying Bitcoin. It's not the women. And it's not just cryptocurrency. In 2018, the same Warwick School of Business did some studies and found that female investors were very much less likely to indulge in like lottery type of investing or speculative investing. So we do know that there's this confidence element that is helping women. It's this another way of saying is a degree of humility, or maybe from a men's perspective, overconfidence that's hurting them. So that piece right there is I would say 50% of it. I'll talk about the other 50% in a second. 50% of the reason behind women having better performance. I'll give you an example. This guy named Richard Fuld. He was the CEO of Lehman Brothers. You remember Lehman Brothers? They collapsed 2008. And he repeatedly refused offers from big institutions like Warren Buffett or a Korean bank. And he was making these decisions just kind of unilaterally, just not consulting people, not consulting his family. And so Lehman Brothers, you may or may not remember, collapsed. And that triggered a whole financial crisis. So later, though, interviews revealed that his wife, Kathy Fuld, had urged him to take the deal and to protect their family's wealth and reputation. Advice he ignored because he was overconfident. Now, the second reason why, by the way, there's a lot of research that makes the case why women are better investing. These are the 2 reasons I'm giving you. One is overconfidence of men, an overconfidence risk profile, lack of humility. There's a lot of different ways you can phrase that. I think you get my point. But the second way is the impulsiveness. Women are not as impulsive. And yeah, these 2 are connected, kind of. Another way of saying it is women are more patient. And studies have shown that men are more likely to make moves in their trading. And this idea of controlling. And I've seen it over the years where I'll get phone calls from men that say, get me out. I don't want to be here anymore. Especially when the market's volatile. It's 90%. It's the men calling me. They want to increase, when the market's going up, they want to put more money in. They get excited. Look, I'm a man. I can relate. But this is not helping men. They sell at the wrong time. They pull money out of the wrong time. Women trade less frequently. And Vanguard actually said that, and this is huge, by the way. This is huge. This is huge when I saw this. Vanguard actually said that women look at their accounts half as much. And the reason that's important is because there's a study that I've referenced. I think it's in my book, 18 to 80. I'm pretty sure it's in there. A study that I'll never forget. Prudential did this study and said that people who look at their accounts more often have poorer returns. So here we are, Vanguard saying that women look at their accounts half as much. And so this impulsive nature that men have, and I know it can be used for good, but it's problematic. In the 90s, as an example, in the 90s, Mark and Julie Ellison, they were running a bakery in Dallas, and profits dipped. And just like I had mentioned earlier, I was really scared about, my situation, not being able to provide for my family. And I was going to impulsively sell or get out of the industry altogether. I don't know what I was going to do. Well, this guy, Mark, when the profits dipped, and I know that feeling, he's like, I'm out. I need a fresh start. Julie, like what my wife did for me, she urged him. She said, hold on, you got to do this. Just give it one more year. Give it one more year. And they reinvested some of the money back into like this espresso machine, and they expanded the breakfast menu. And then within 18 months, this was in Inc. magazine, their revenue tripled. And eventually it tripled, and they franchised their entire restaurant and what we know now as the Corner Bakery. And so Mark later admitted, look, if it wasn't for Julie's patience, I'd have sold it for pennies. So what do we do with this information? We know these things are true anecdotally, and we see that research supports it, and we know through various studies that women are better investors. So what do we do with this information? I mean, obviously I'm talking to a mixed crowd, both men and women. But so if you're a man, you just have to engage your spouse or your wife or your significant other. I mean, it's so important. Even Warren Buffett said this. I did not know. Warren Buffett, his quote that I've always loved, and it makes me feel good, because he says when it comes to successful investing, it's more about temperament than intellect. I believe he goes on to substantiate it and says something about like there's a minimal level of intellect, but he says temperament, not intellect, is what makes the difference when it comes to investing. But what I didn't know is that quote was inspired by his wife, who told him oftentimes to cool off and to think long term. He credits his wife, Susie, for encouraging him to have some temperament, because he said he lacked it. As a financial advisor, the advisory business often discounts the female voice. New York Life did study in 2019 and said that 40% of women said that their advisors not likely to listen to their ideas. That's just foolishness. And so one of the things that we did at PAX is we recognize that we've got to, as advisors, we all have these biases. And, even as advisors, we may listen to the man by default and not knowing that we have these biases. And then also the man may just talk over the woman. And then before you know it, we've finished an hour and a half meeting and didn't even hear her voice. So what we did is we incorporated an actual process and a methodology, and you've probably experienced it before, called honest conversations. And we're refining that as we speak, because we just want to have another level of it. But it's an actual system where we engage. We don't just try. We actually have a process of engaging what we call the non-CFO spouse, because sometimes it is the man, but oftentimes it's the woman. The non-CFO spouse, the CFO meaning Chief Financial Officer, the one who's not in the numbers, who doesn't care and I'm using air quotes, doesn't care about this stuff. She doesn't know it. She just not interested in it. But we created a process where we could extrapolate her voice, because we know how important it is to creating a plan and seeing it through. We know, and so we have to figure it out. We have to have an intentional, as advisors, we have to have an intentional process of somehow hearing from that non-CFO spouse, extrapolating that vision and those ideas into the dialogue. And that non-CFO spouse has to be present in all facets, from the planning stage to if there's a business being sold. I'm a spiritual guy, so I'm just going to kind of tie a bow on this with the spiritual considerations. In Genesis 2:18, the Lord said, "It is not good for man to be alone." Do you remember that? It's not good for man to be alone. And he said, "I will make a helper suitable for him." Genesis 2:18, helper. So, I mean, we could make the case. I've actually wrestled with the word help in a lot of the scriptures, because it's important to understand that word help has a couple different ways to understand it. And one of them is, if you look at the Hebrew, which is either kenegdo. It doesn't mean helper. It means like a corresponding partner. And it does not imply a subordinate in any way. A complementary, another way to think about it is a complementary person, an equal, a shared identity in the image of God. So, yes, women are better at investing. It's the reality. And so we have to figure out a way to make sure that this complementary relationship is working together to guide the family, to be patient, to have some humility, and to be the calm oftentimes in the storms. This is not independent, it's interdependent. It's harmony. It's complementary. So men, gentlemen, engage your spouse. She's wise, and you're not. Tongue in cheek, but it's important. It's important, even if she doesn't know all the datas and the formulas. It's very important to engage her in the conversation and to hear from her. And there's a long track record of successful men who've done very well because they engage their spouse in the financial conversations. So thanks for listening today. I hope that helps you guys. And remember, as always, you think different when you think long-term. Have a great day.